My secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
Welcome to this bonus episode of This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States. At Iba Pa. On this episode, we'll be speaking with Geena Rocero, a Filipino American supermodel, TED speaker, and transgendered advocate. She is the founder of GenderProud.com, and this is coming out during Trans Awareness Week. So we're very excited to have this conversation with her, and I hope you enjoy. We are joined by our special guest today,
Geena Rocero.
Yeah!
Special.
I didn't have my horn ready.
Oh God!
Yes.
Yes.
We could bump it up and then.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I can
We'll
make
fix it in post.
And today we're recording a special episode for Trans Awareness Week, which is in November.
Yes.
And so I'm very excited to have you here.
And we are here at
Visual Communications VC in Little Tokyo. Thank you to the staff here for opening their doors and hosting us today. And what else am I gonna say right now, guys?
Let's get started.
So I have been a fan of yours, Geena, since 2015, when half the crew, sorry, Ryan, you were not there, went to Washington,
the
D.C.
shade is real already.
I was not there.
Too early for that.
I've already had coffee.
I was not invited.
Ryan wasn't invited, so he wasn't there. But
What was this? Joe's wedding?
No,
wasn't invited to that
one. Because Joe Gurley, Mike, and I, and our friend Jim were part of the LA contingent for the White House Filipino American History Month celebration.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You were on the panel with the likes of Joe Coy, Apple Diap,
Ronnie Del Carmen,
Cassie, and that panel was amazing.
Billy Dick. I'm trying to remember. Sorry.
You remember?
I'm trying to remember.
I think Steve.
Him and his fedora.
Steve Raga or
and,
Billy Dick? No.
Christy Comerford.
Oh,
yes.
Yes. And that panel was very informative. And my biggest takeaway from that panel was you.
Yeah.
That was the first time I had knew of you. Gurley actually was like the one who spotted you when we were in line. And she was like, oh my God, it's Geena Rocero. And I'm like, who's Geena Rocero, Gurley? And she's like, she's this beautiful model who is amazing and smart and intelligent. And I'm like, okay. And then the panel happened and I'm like, yes, everything Gurley said is correct. You were my favorite thing on the panel. You were very inspiring and you have been on my bucket list to get on the show. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Salamat again. I mean, this is incredible to be here.
Yes. So we have some questions and we just want to we'll start easy with something like, what were your experiences growing up trans in Manila?
Yeah.
Softball.
We go way back.
Softball.
Okay. Let me take a little sip of this. Yeah.
Taga saan ka?
I am from Makati. I grew up in Makati. My mom's side of the family is from Isabela, so Ilocana, and then my dad is from Romblon.
Manila.
Yeah, so I'm from all over the place. But I grew up in Makati, in a little alley in Makati. And ever since really young, I'm just one of those, always wanted to be outside and always playing outside. My dad, I'm always the one who's, I think that's why I love traveling and going places. I'm always been the one who my dad would always call, it's time to get back for lunch, get back here. Or always the one skipping, the afternoon naps growing up because I just want to play.
I hated naps. But I love them now.
So here's the funny thing, right? I mean, at least I remember growing up, especially summertime, taking a nap. If you take a nap, you get a reward with pan de coco and
merienda.
the merienda. But because I always skip, or usually I make it on time to get back, before everybody wakes up, and then I get my pan de coco and my ensaymada and all of that
hungry.
stuff. I know, I love summer after my naps, but I'm always outside. So I mean, growing up, it's I've always known that there's something different about me. I've always expressed my feminine side, playing around with Barbie dolls, with feminine clothes, and I think the really distinct memory that I have when it comes to like my expression about my feminine side is I would always wear the t-shirt on my head or the towel, and I was like
a turban.
Yeah, a turban, or if I want like a really long hair, like I would like twist that long blanket and just all sashay away and just feel myself and get my life and just sashay down the street in our little alley, and every time I walk down our little hagdanan, and I just feel like I'm walking down swimsuit competition, Miss Universe.
That's your catwalk.
I mean, yeah,
You knew.
I mean, it started really young. I mean, like the Philippines, I remember even at, 7, 8 years old, you wake up in the morning to watch Miss Universe. And that's the thing to do.
It's so funny. Like, I had a boss in that would record. He was Filipino. He would record the Miss Universe pageant, and he would bring the tapes in, the VHS tapes, and we would watch it at lunch. Like, and he would criticize everything to the T. And I thought to myself, this is a sport for our people, like beauty pageants.
It's like a national sport.
It's a national sport. And to this day, like when I watch Miss Universe or whatnot, like I'm always like, why do I care? Why do I know? Oh, because I've been watching this since birth. And I know.
Give me goosebumps. You say, yeah. I mean, like you're really like it's part of the culture since very young.
And it's funny because a few years ago, I had thought of this question, and I actually asked Joe, since he is a PhD. I posed the question. So the Philippines is so Catholic, right? And it's so ingrained in Catholicism, and yet there is still like an odd acceptance. Majority Catholic. But then there is this acceptance of trans people, but it's almost like you can be seen but not heard, like with the likes of like Vice Ganda, who is like one of the biggest stars over there. But it's like Vice can only be a caricature, but you could never know like about Vice's personal life and whatnot. Yeah. And then there is the popularity of these beauty contests. Like, how is that? My question is always like, how do they reconcile the two? I guess.
Yeah, I think I'd say it's a walking contradiction in its sense, because I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's we have this very mainstream visibility of transgender beauty pageants on national TV. I mean, like that was my first job. I was my first job is being a transgender beauty queen at 15, and traveled all over, the Philippines. I had a transgender mother who was my mentor. I was, they became sort of my chosen family, and we would travel all over the Philippines, like especially during the month of May. There's so many fiestas.
Yeah.
And, during fiestas, there's always a singing contest, dance contests, and transgender beauty pageants that happen usually most of the time during a traditional Catholic celebration. Usually if it's a Fiesta de Guadalupe, the main, it's usually like either a weekend or like a week-long celebration, and like the build up to that is the big transgender beauty pageant. So it's a thing that people watch. It's a gathering of like mainstream Filipino culture. It's part of our culture, but there's I like to put it that it's there's a being trans has it's culturally visible, but not politically recognized. So there's no rights for trans people. There's still no rights for trans people. I mean, I was just talking to a couple of friends that does some advocacy and activist work in the Philippines. Like in the Philippines, a country with hundreds of millions in population, there's 10 endocrinologists that support trans people that would give prescriptions. So like that's just nuts. So that kind of degree of political rights and political power, political recognition. It's not there at all. I mean, certainly there's movements that's happening for advocating for, anti-discrimination policies.
Yeah.
So it provided that sense of visibility, there's many of the pageant in a national TV would usually happens during the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. So people would go to church and then they would go home and they watch a trans beauty pageant.
Yeah.
And it's being seen mostly as an entertainment in its context. But for us, for me specifically, that was my first.
That was your livelihood.
That was my livelihood. I would make a lot of money, and I would use that money to buy hormones that I would buy, under the table. It's not prescribed, so it's dangerous. But, because this sort of knowledge of like how to properly take hormones was being passed through, sisterhood and community. So we would just trust each other. And I'm not advocating for it because it's dangerous. And I have friends that have had health complications because of that.
Oh, wow.
And as I mentioned, because of that, it's being seen as entertainment. Like, it's also important, Vice Ganda is perhaps one of the most visible LGBT, entertainers in the world. She's not trans. Vice Ganda doesn't identify, at least for what I know of, does not identify as trans, as a trans woman. But certainly the visibility and the power that he has when it comes to that, it's important. But it's also important that that's not just the representation that we see.
Thank you for the clarification because for sure.
Go ahead, Joe. How did you get into beauty pageants in the first place?
Oh wow, it's a little bit giving me goosebumps thinking about this because it's such a moment that I would never forget. The first pageant that I saw probably around 7 years old, and it was our fiesta in Makati, the fiesta. Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, and we had a pageant. I was watching this pageant and I was in front of the stage and I was with friends and I was just transported into this different world when I saw like these trans women just like going one after the other, I remember specifically this one trans woman, her name is Leia, and she, joining pageants, you have to impersonate a celebrity, and she was impersonating Phoebe Cates. Oh, God, she was so gorgeous. Love you, Phoebe Cates. She was wearing this one-piece, high-cut, neon pink swimsuit.
Oh, Fast Times at High, Phoebe Cates,
throwback to like high-cut, neon pink swimsuit, and I was just like, wow, who is this woman? I just felt like, maybe I'm her, that sense of recognition that like I saw myself through her, that sense of like the visual like representation that I could be her, I could be just like her. So it's always been that dream, but that moment was like a moment of a recognition, a validation. And little did I know, at 15 years old, I was watching one of these pageants again, and my friend, took me to a friend has some friends who were some friends that were joining that pageant that night where we lived, and they were coming from out of town, and she brought me in. She was like, I want to introduce you to my friends. They're like a group of like pageant people. They have their own makeup artists. So there's like a contingent of them. So she introduced me to my transgender mother named Tiger Lily.
I love that name.
Yeah, so sweet. So she introduced me, and we had this sense of connection, and she told me, have you joined a pageant before? I was like, no, not yet. I have not. And she told me, like, I think, why don't you wear a two-piece swimsuit? I want to see you walk. I want to see how you project. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And I did it. And she was just like, okay, you're joining tonight. Wow. Yeah. So that was the first time. And that night, I ended up winning second runner-up, best in swimsuit, best in long gown.
Oh, get it.
Oh, girl, it changed my life. It's just revolutionary for me, of like just that sense of, I want to do this. I am this, that sense of, it was
I
magical.
laugh because like a true mother, she said, put the swimsuit on and go.
Yeah, right now. Do it right now.
Do it right now. Let me see if you can do it.
I want to see your pasarela walk.
And I can hear the judgment. I can hear the that's good. That's good. Wait. No.
Yeah, that's it, because there was a group of them, and they it felt so distant in a way, because I've never encountered that type of group of people that like this is what they do. Right. This is like this is their professional life, and this is, they're experts in this.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for so long. And in a way at that time, and it still is in many cases, it still is sort of like a form of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of, a passage of
like a rite of passage.
a rite of passage, as a young trans woman growing up in the Philippines to join a pageant at the time, and it still is in many places.
Yeah.
So to do that, because for so long you've only just seen the images of them in pageants and in neighborhood fiesta, and all of a sudden like I'm gonna be put on that stage.
I have question. So like pageants are like a very Filipino. It's a Philippines rite of passage for trans folks. Is that similar, would you say, to like ball culture in America?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the ball culture and the Philippine pageant culture. There's a lot of synergy, a lot of similarity when it comes to, because, as a young person, if you're a trans woman or a young gender non-conforming person and you're feeling like you're left out of your family's not so accepting, you tend to like go outside of your blood family and find that sense of community and love. And trans pageant in the Philippines like provided that sense of community and mentorship and chosen family and love and companionship and freedom and fun and all of those things and you also sort of belong in different houses. Like I belong in the house of
Tiger Lily? No, or was there?
It's actually called TriStar Productions.
Ooh.
Yes, it's like, and someone has some clan has called Maristela, Monte Carlo.
Oh, fancy!
And each houses have a very specific sort of look and specific image that they project. My last name turned into Geena Garcia, and I used to impersonate Asunta de Rossi.
Oh,
I don't know who that was.
She's gorgeous. Like she kind of looks like me.
But you're prettier.
She was like just so. She was the one that I used to that was my stage name. So yeah, good times.
I feel like that's fascinating that like that element of the culture translates internationally. Because like the Philippines is 3,000 miles away, and then like ball culture, since it originated in
sorry.
Okay, yes.
Sorry.
You're the PhD.
Sorry.
I am how many? 5,000? 10,000? 7,000? Far away. An ocean away. But then like ball culture, like how it originated in New York, like there are houses there and they have mothers there, and it's like, it's like almost like wherever you go, you're trying to find your family.
Yeah. It's this notion of resilience, and using art and using expression to really find your way in the world that does not have that space for you. And it exists all over the place. And, certainly ball culture is such a phenomenon and is such a big part of the culture that existed and, obviously, that exists all over the world. Well. Such a global phenomenon.
Yeah. And it's just interesting, like in the recent years, like on Vice Land, they had that house show, which I like devoured all of that.
Incredible.
It was really good. And then at the same time, FX had Pose.
Oh my God.
So it was like the fictional version of it. And I'm like,
if anybody have not seen Pose,
it's so good.
I'm not gonna make, but like if you have not seen Pose, it's so incredible. It's a very revolutionary show centering trans women of color as main characters, and also to have such platform like that, and also having Janet Mock and Our Lady J as trans women who are also writers and producers behind the scenes, it just makes such a difference.
And it's like the best soap opera ever. Like,
and all the outfit and the drama, and it's all of it in the history.
Yeah, like Electra, the way that the mother on the show, the way she like acts reminds me of like Dynasty. And I just realized like, this is just because my Lola trained me to love anything soap operas, and so I'm gonna watch.
I mean, don't we all love soap opera? I mean, like
Life is a soap opera.
Life is a soap opera. I mean, like, even growing up in the Philippines, like even the international export of soap opera. I mean, growing up, like one of the first idea of this gorgeous beauty that I remember is Thalia.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, Maria Maria, Mercedes, Maria, Mercedes. I mean,
Sorry, I
Everybody's dancing in this room right now. You
Maria
can't see it. but-
Barrios.
Sino yan? Sino yan?
It's like the telenovelas that became popular
in the 90s, Talia
Yeah.
was like a star, and then she had all these songs on like Super Estrella, and I would like sing along to them in high school.
I mean, she was for me, she was the ideal of like, oh, how gorgeous she is, you know, and it's the drama and
You know, because they make that like look, that fierce look, and then they do that like cut, like that zoom in right away, and then they're staring at the screen.
Dun, dun, dun.
Maria del Barrio.
Like something dramatic happened. Someone's dad is not really their dad.
Or like, you know, the typical, you know, trope of, you know, somebody dies and then later on after a few seasons
They're
she comes
not
back,
dead.
you know, they come back,
They come
you know,
back.
they're
Some
here.
medical miracle.
There's a secret twin that you didn't know.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was gonna ask. So we've been talking about kind of like the safe spaces that you've experienced through pageants and the acceptance. I want to ask you a little bit about the other side. You know, was there an experience growing up in the Philippines of people not accepting? And I imagine so. And if there are any other safe spaces outside of the pageant business,
Sure.
that kind of understands. I know we were talking about the visibility, and it's very visible entertainment, but if people don't get it, where do people get to know that more or understand it?
I mean, it's such a horrible thing to really understand what's going on. I mean, like personally myself, I mean, even growing up, I would walk from home to school and school going home, and our tricycle drivers, God, they were the most horrible, especially the men tricycle drivers. They would feel entitled growing up. I mean, this is what I experienced as a young age, you know. They would scream the word bakla, constantly, and they would just hunt me. And I would always remember what shortcut should I take, to go from home to school, or maybe I'll go this route, so maybe nobody would see me, and they would somehow just, somehow they would see maybe the way I walk, maybe the way I, carry myself, and I would just be the target of that dehumanizing and that direct. I mean, obviously, bakla, the word, has so many different meanings and has an indigenous context. It has sometimes it could mean the way it's being used as an effeminate gay man, or sometimes depending on the tone. It's used as the most derogatory term. And that's one of the things that I would remember. And it's, because of, I know, as I mentioned, it's like this walking contradiction of having the culture of visibility, but also when you go home, that influence of religion and that really, not just the influence of religion, the really radical,
fundamentalist,
that like God made you a boy, be a boy. I mean, that's a constant thing that I would remember. I would walk down, our little alley and just be so effeminate and expressing myself, and their neighbors like, God made you a boy, be a boy. I'm like, no.
I don't understand. It's so. I don't know if it's because I'm Filipino American, but I can't understand how those things, the contradictions, reconcile themselves. It's always like a frustrating part of the Filipino American experience for me, or just the Filipino experience. Like, we embrace this so openly, right? We embrace pageants, we embrace, and then it's like, be a boy.
It's the judgmental culture of that,
It's limited, and it's also sad because pre-Hispanic culture, like the gender fluidity was so much more acceptable back then.
Yeah, I mean, I had to say, even me growing up in the Philippines, even the understanding outside of the historical. Hey, growing up in the Philippines, we were not taught of like what is babaylan, what is like gender fluid. Like, we were not taught in Philippine history, at least the school where I grew
It's
up.
like the erasure of all of that,
of gender fluidity, of pre-colonized. It even are sad to say this, that even growing up in the Philippines, like that history of the way history is being taught is through the white lens growing up. So the erasure of that was completely, such a disadvantage. It's such a it's a shame to not be taught of that. And sadly, I had to move to United States
to learn
about my history, to decolonize my own mind, to understand the breadth of knowledge of the long history of gender, and just really truly the pre-colonized identities of
Yeah.
Filipinos.
So speaking of that, how did you come to the United States?
So my mom has been here since 1995. So my mom's side of the family, you know, because of the war, they fought for the American side. So during 1960s Immigration Act, so it's part of that. So my grandmas were, my grandma and some of my aunties were here, like I think since the early 80s. So they had to go through that petition process.
Yeah.
But because my mom was the eldest in the family, and
Yeah.
she was married at the time, so she had to wait longer.
Oh, yes.
So she moved here in 1995. I moved here in 2001. So I had to wait for that petition process.
Because she had to petition you, and then
She petitioned me, and it was that kind of, you know, life-changing moment for me. I was 17. I was, you know, I was one of the biggest transgender diva in the Philippines.
and then to come to here
On top of my game, being
Yeah.
a trans beauty queen, and she told me like, well, you know, your petition process came through. You should, you know, you can now move to the U.S. And
Yeah.
you know, I've talked about this so many times, and really the initial reaction that I have at that time is that maybe I could wait, maybe. You know, I'm having the best time of my life.
Yeah, I
you
mean, you're
know,
making so
with my
much
friends,
money.
making money. I was with my friends, you know, boyfriends, and all of those things. I was 17. I was young and having the best time. And all of a sudden, you're being presented with this, you know, a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
But because my mom truly loved me, and she basically, you know, like a few weeks later, she like researched this thing, and she told me that, you know, when you move here in the U.S., specifically California and San Francisco, you could change your name and gender marker on your documents.
so you could do that in 2000.
In 2001, yeah.
okay.
It's we could go deeper in like the policy context and,
Yeah.
and everything. But at the time, you could do that once you've had the surgery. And it has changed now. But like just the idea of being presented that, and coming from my mom
Yeah.
saying that like you could be who
She
you
did
are.
that research for you, or
To be, yeah, she did. And then you could do that, and that just like blew my mind, because it's something that it's not possible in the Philippines. It's still not possible in the Philippines, and in many places all over the world. Just to have the idea of being recognized and being validated, you know, in your documents, and,
Yeah.
and the way you exist to the world, the way you access education, the way you're respected.
Yeah.
You know, when you present your ID, when the police stops you, to
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're applying for a job, like
Yeah.
that was mind blowing for me. So I was just like, I'm moving. All right, let's do it.
Because you were like, my ID is going to reflect who I am in the mirror.
Yes, and to follow up on that, it's, you know, this is in 2001, and I remember moving to the U.S. and to San Francisco specifically, and seeing like Golden Gate Bridge was like just a dream world for me. Like it was my first time getting on a plane, you know, to travel outside. And I remember I was wearing not necessarily a señales, but you know, it's like a sandals, and I landed in San Francisco. It is so cold, girl. But I did remember the smell of San Francisco airport. Just smells so fresh.
Oh, I was going to say diesel.
Well, outside of the airport, I just remember we landed at night, and I just remember how fresh the scent is. You know, that's I
Very
remember.
different from like landing in the Manila airport and going outside and going, burning trash.
Yes, that's a tea. You know, like it's just so different. You know, so
I felt the same way actually. Yeah,
You
when
know.
I came here, it's like brisk. It's a little bit cold, and you're like, oh man, America.
But you came to LA. I would imagine San Francisco was very cold.
yeah, and we landed at night.
So did somebody bring you a jacket? Like, how does that work? Did you have a little
Yeah,
sweater?
So we got picked up by, you know, my mom's friend, and we went straight to Burger King. Yeah.
yes.
Oh yeah, we went straight to Burger King, and the following day we went straight to my auntie. We were living at the time in Vallejo, California, so my auntie took me to. I've been hearing about this thing called the buffet. So
You hear about the buffet.
that was my auntie and my cousins have been talking about it. So I finally saw it. So I loved it.
Were you like, wait, I could eat anything?
Oh yeah, I mean the idea of like
Right.
that selection.
Abundance and selection. Right.
So then you went to high school here, or
No, so I
college?
finished high school
Okay.
in the Philippines.
Okay.
I started working in Macy's in San Francisco in Union Square. I found some friends that were working there, and they were like, "We're all here." So, you know, I had no friends. So they were there. That I was introduced to other friends that were working in Macy's in San Francisco, and as someone not having my own makeup artist and hairstylist in the Philippines, I was just like, all right, let's pretend I could do this, And
You're like, I remember what they did to me. I could do it to somebody
wink,
else.
wink, And I remember going to a salon and having my hair done, at that time, and just makeup done, and just pretending like this is my hair or this is my makeup. And I got the job, and
Nice.
I was there. All of a sudden, I found all these community of trans people and LGBT people. I found my gay best friend that was working there. Denmark, shout out to Denmark.
Hey, hello.
And just sort of created that sense of community and family for me. Yeah. And I was there for 4 years.
And you mentioned Safe Space, like a nonprofit organization. What was the organization that supported you when you were there?
So an organization in San Francisco called Asia Pacific Wellness Center. It's an incredible organization. That's why it's so critical and important that we support local nonprofit organizations, especially the ones that support and provide that safe space for new immigrants, to a diverse community of people, not just LGBT people, but like a community of like immigrant communities. And that space provided every Wednesday for us where we could bring our food. We would, bring our potluck. But also we would talk about what does it mean to be trans? What does it mean to understand about your health? How to properly take hormones that you're actually, I remember how realized like, wow, this is what we have not been doing in the Philippines.
So that was one of my questions. So like when you go from there to here, from the Philippines to here, and then you realize like, was your hormone intake like totally off in the Philippines, or?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, we were taking a lot of like pills to injectable hormones, just like friends would just like inject us, and not knowing anything. We know where it's going to feminize us. We know it's a good thing because that's what everybody was doing.
Yeah.
So didn't realize that until, Asia Pacific Wellness Center having a sort of medical sort of workshop that was there that was, giving us like, oh, you need to take your blood samples, you need to make sure that your kidneys properly,
Oh, geez.
all those things that like you
weren't thinking about it.
that was not available at all. So this sense of provided, a sense of, okay, this is actually the way you do it. And in a way it empowered us, empowered me to like, okay, there's right way to do it.
So how did you kind of become more vocal about your politics and your activism?
Oh, it's quite recent, I have to say. I mean, like this political awakening is something that, that's really, really new to me. I mean, like, I was a model in New York for 8 years, and I was a model. I was living in the trans community. We call it stealth. I was not out. So in a way, like I was out and proud growing up in the Philippines as a young person, so visible, so vocal about, what I'm doing. And then I moved to the US because there's no cultural visibility. I needed to go back to the closet.
So you were passing.
Yeah, I needed to distinguish passing and passing privilege, where when I moved to New York, I decided did not tell my agent. When I moved to New York City, I decided to not tell my model agent that I'm trans because there was not an out trans model at that time. And sort of there's a sense of there's a big fashion supermodel named Carolyn Cosi, Tula. She had a role in James Bond. So when she was a trans woman, and when she got outed, her career disappeared. Like she got outed and she got like shoved into like, okay, disappear. So in a way she provided a sense of like inspiration and like, oh, maybe I could be a model like her, but I just can't be outed. So I for so long I was not out as a model, and I remember, yes, it's such a dream come true to be a model, working, shooting TV commercials to magazine shoots. And, I was a successful working model. But then I would go home and I would feel so paranoid that like, oh, Page Six magazine will like out me sometimes. So that sense of like paranoia and depression and anxiety was like a constant thing. And I think after many years of having that, I just had enough.
Yeah.
I mean, literally I've gone through my own process of, depression and sense of like what's going to happen in my career, what's going to happen if somebody finds out. This is like a constant nagging voice in your head. And I've just had enough. And after, on my 30th birthday, I was with my boyfriend and we were traveling in Tulum, Mexico. And he basically asked me, we're dancing salsa on the beach, having margaritas. Everything happens in, really good job.
Of course,
So, always leads you to the right places. So, and he just, because I've been thinking about it for so long, maybe it's time for me to come out. Maybe it's time for me to share my story. Maybe I'm willing to take that risk. And he asked me that question, and just that knee-jerk reaction, I just said, love, he asked me, so what does turning 30 mean? What does it mean for you? And it's like, love, I'm ready to come out. I'm ready to tell my story. And that moment of really
acknowledging
and sort of like accountability to myself and to my partner, that this is what I'm going to do, allowed me, and like literally a switch of a mindset of like, I'm the sense of pride of wanting to come out and wanting to share my story to the world. Like that shame all of a sudden just got like,
it disappeared.
Wow.
And that sense of pride. And I was just like, my first thought is, how am I going to tell this story?
Yeah.
That if I'm going to do this, it has to be the biggest possible platform that I could do. And I thought of maybe I'll do a TED Talk.
How did that kind of come about?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a dream of doing the TED Talk. I remember emailing a friend named Cameron Sinclair, a dear, dear friend, an awesome human being. Cameron Sinclair actually had spoken at TED, and he had actually won a TED Prize. So TED has this prize where they give $1 million to a specific wish or entity that a project that they will support. And Heb won TED Prize, I think 8 years prior to that. So he's part of the TED community. And I reached out to him. I sent an email like, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm going to do. And, lovingly and surprisingly, he was like, I support you. Let me talk to the curator and founders of TED. And a few days later, I got an email like, they want to get on the phone. I was like, whoa.
It's like instantaneously.
It's real. Like, what am I thinking here? I'm like, who comes out in a TED Talk? Like, it's nuts.
Like you manifested it and then it happened.
There you go, right? I mean, like,
Pero sino si Ted?
Si Manong Ted. Si Manong Ted.
Brother Ted.
Brad Ted.
I was waiting.
Bossing Ted.
I mean, there's not an episode unless there is a dad joke. So it happened. Good job, Joe.
I love the Manong.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, like, we got on a call and they told me about, I told them about my story, and it's like, okay, let's do this. So, and it was, the first conversation. I mean, this is 2014. Like, even to think about 2014, like, wow, so much has changed.
Yeah.
So much things have
So much has changed.
Yeah. And it's like, nobody has spoken about being trans on a TED, like the TED conference.
Yeah.
Like, the big conference. Like, this is the biggest conference.
Not the side ones, it's the actual.
Yeah.
The TED one.
The TED one.
The TED.
See.
So it changed my life,
Not X.
Not X.
Right.
Was that what
like
you said?
TEDx, and there's a bunch of different like local or
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a powerful platform in its own. Like we're self-organized TED. But this is like the one that they do every year.
This is Lolo Ted.
The Lolo Ted, si Manong Ted, si Lolo Ted, the big Ted. Yeah, the granddaddy of all.
So what was the reaction?
Changed my life. I mean, it's
First time I ever saw you was that TED Talk. Yeah.
It's also, I think at the time, because I remember giving a TED Talk on March 20, and March 31st is International Transgender Day of Visibility. And I think when you do a TED Talk, at least, at that TED conference, they don't tell you when your talk's going to come out. Like there's obviously an editorial process.
Yeah.
And I gave the TED Talk, and they were like, well, we want to release it, on like 10 days later. And I was like, oh crap, like at the time, with my GenderProud co-founder, it was an idea. It was something that we wanted to do. And we've always been thinking that, we want to capitalize on this moment, that this is not just a talk. Like we want to launch an advocacy campaign about this. Let's shed a light. Like let's make this bigger than a TED Talk, which is so big in its own rights. And then we were told that like 10 days later, they're releasing it. And we were like, Ali Hoffman, my co-founder, was like, we need to put together a website. So,
You're like scrambling. Like, what do we do? What do I do? What do I do?
it's real hustle, girl. It was hustle.
It's like calling everyone I know who's a graphic designer. Who do
We
this?
were asking favors, from friends and friends and friends.
Yeah.
And, luckily, it came at the right
By
time.
hook or by crook, you get it done.
You gotta get it done. Yeah.
But that's the best way to get it done.
Yeah.
Just like community kind of comes together.
It
makes
really is a
happen.
community effort. And,
Yeah.
when the TED Talk launched, we launched GenderProud at the same time. And because, again, 2014,
It
there's so
wasn't
many-
that long ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that there's something about that cultural zeitgeist that was happening at the
Yeah.
time. And then I think it was June at the time when Laverne Cox Time magazine came
Yeah.
out with Transgender Tipping Point
Yeah.
or her Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of conversation in pop culture about trans narrative. So it was, who would have figured?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how many views has the TED Talk have so far?
I think on the TED homepage, it's about TED homepage. From what I've heard, from what they said, like they combined their homepage and their YouTube. It's about 4 million views.
Wow.
And many other things, and then translated in 32 languages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's changed
That's
my
amazing
life, changed everything.
That they
for me.
translate it. That's good. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like the reach then goes beyond like English speakers. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
because it's such a global
Yeah.
platform that they do. And it's even that as a project, like they have this
Yeah.
open source project where people from all over the world get to translate the TED Talk.
yeah.
How did your family or friends react to it?
Did you
it came
brace
out?
them? Like, did you
Oh,
warn
they
them?
did.
Or-
I mean, I have this such an emotional thing to talk about because I remember after getting off that stage, I called my sister, one of my sister, and asked her, like, I did it. I finally did it. And I remember my sister telling me, "Thank God you're finally free, but we're also free." Yeah. Because it's such a because before I came out, my story is always like, please don't tell Ate, don't tell them what I'm doing now. So in a way, they were part of the journey of my story that like they can't really talk so much about me. They can't really tag me on Facebook. I mean, like, hey, I'm like admitting the shame that I was feeling that like I would like press, ignore and like some of my friends back in the Philippines. So
Oh, because they knew you
they
then.
knew you. They
Yeah.
knew me. Like, and it's like horrible to think about it, but like because of that shame that I was feeling, like sometimes I think about, thank God there was no social media when I was joining pageant. Like you would
Yeah.
find me in pageants in
Yeah.
in the little Esquinita in Manila, in Tondo, in like all the Palayan, in all
mean,
the villages,
now
like
these
in TV.
days,
Yeah.
like it would go viral, and then you'd be on Ellen.
And
like,
there's like there's no sense of hide.
Yeah.
So I think it's, and obviously they've loved me and supported me, so it's just an emotional moment that like, holy crap, I just did that.
Yeah.
You can't put
Yeah,
that
you
back
guys
in the
were all
back.
committed to it.
Yes.
Too, right?
And them, and obviously friends,
Sure.
and I think it's important to have that support, to like let them know like this, I'm about to do this crazy thing.
yeah. So did your modeling career change after coming out on the TED Talk?
Yeah, in a sense, yes. I remember, in a way, and there's just this thing of like media, like all of a sudden media would put you into this pedestal of like, you're the
Yeah.
trans representative,
Yeah.
which is like, it's such a big pressure to have. Like, I
Yeah.
don't claim to represent
course.
every single trans person.
Yeah,
I don't
you represent yourself.
I represent myself. Yes, I'm a trans person. I speak about a very specific experience. It changed my life in the sense of, it's stupid as it may sound. I felt like I was having my Angelina Jolie moment, like I'm going to give back to my community. I'm going to go back to the Philippines and like work with the communities that loved me. And I did that, in a sense. And there's a sense of, I want to work with the UN. I want to work with, advocating for transgender policies all over the
Yeah.
world. So my job also all of a sudden became like, okay,
Like advocacy.
Yes,
Yeah.
advocacy platform, because I know that there was such a moment. I want to use that moment to like shed more light into these conversations
Yeah.
and a very specific global experience as an immigrant, as a
Yeah.
trans person of color, growing up in the Philippines. So and I did. I was so blessed to have worked with many different UN agencies like UNDP, UN Free and Equal Human Rights, to the State Department, to USAID, like all of these organizations that at the time they're like, okay, let's bring you into these conversations. So, that was a dream come true. Like
Yeah.
that was like, this has always been the dream to speak about these things, and obviously modeling on the side. And,
Yeah.
And
So then modeling became the side gig because your advocacy work became
that puts sort of a let me focus on this, because I
Yeah.
know this is such a moment and it's such an important moment. I would still model. I would
Yeah.
still do, like, I did I did an advertising campaign for Marriott, you know, magazine covers.
Yeah.
I think it's just the way they approach you as this personality.
Yeah, because you're no longer like a model like that's coming through like every day, like trying to like book the gigs, right? Because now you're like essentially like a supermodel on like
you stood up for something.
Level. Yeah.
A model who stood up for something.
Yeah. So
Real supermodel.
Real supermodel.
super duper.
Super duper model.
Where's my light? Where's my light?
That's why I just got goosebumps. I'm like, man, he's spoken all those, because you know we think about modeling as in like fashion sense, but that's what I'm talking about. You know, like being able to actually speak about
the UN.
it. Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So kudos to you. And my gosh, I'm done now.
No, where's more?
So GenderProud, you co-founded it. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. In 2014, when we launched it, it was an advocacy campaign, meaning, you know, working with all these, you know, global entities like the UN, UNDP, like how do we collaborate with them in telling more stories about what it means to be trans, advocating for transgender policy. Specifically this thing called gender recognition law, which it means it's a policy and a law that allow trans people to change name and gender marker on legal documents, which in many places all over the world that's not possible. There's some handful of countries like Argentina, you know, Ireland to India who recently passed. So there's some countries that allow trans people to change name and gender marker. So we were shedding light on that specific policy because I know that policy is something that will change a trans person's life, you know, to have that political power, to be recognized as a person as you are. So we were working with them. We would go on panel discussions. We would like meet with different, you know, communities all over the world in this thing called capacity building, which basically you meet them and you figure out, you know, how could we help them in, you know, to organize, to articulate these stories, to, you know, and support them,
Yeah.
you know, in a sense. So that started with that. And I think after a year into it, I realized that I've had many interactions where I'm in the room, you know, advocating and talking about transgender policy with mostly older white men. And I would just think of, you know what, this is great. But I just feeling that sense of disconnect that,
of course.
you know, yes, they were talking about statistics and numbers, but I'm not really sure if they're understanding the nuances of the experience, you know.
I know. The nuances.
Big word, nuance. So the nuance of that experience of what it means to be trans, especially a trans woman of color.
Of course.
Yes.
So I just realized, you know, there's nothing better than to sort of bridge that gap and into that nuance of stories and humanity and the breadth of experiences than to create a production company and to produce stories about what it means to be trans, to be gender nonconforming, and to be an executive producer of a production company was, for me, I'd say revolutionary at the time, because for so long, transgender people have not been in control of our narrative. And I found this out about a month and a half ago that Jerry Springer was just canceled. It was on for that long.
Wait, what? It was just canceled?
Yeah. It was on for that long. And the reason why I said that, because for so long, that sense of media representation was like the mainstream.
That was the norm.
That was
like
the norm.
sensationalist.
Yeah, or like you're being dehumanized.
Right,
You're
right.
like
You're catfished.
Yeah,
or-
is he a man or a woman? Oh, did he know? Did he not know?
Yeah.
So like that sense of media representation, like trans people never had that control in our story for so long. So to be not just in front of the camera, but also behind the camera, you know, producing, you know, web series or TV special, been so fortunate to have worked with, platforms and Viacom family like Logo and VH1. I remember this particular, you know, web series and became a TV special with Logo called Beautiful As I Want to Be, which is basically working with transgender youth and asking them that question. What does it mean to be beautiful as you want to be? What is that dream? What is that? Do you want to be a painter? Okay, maybe we'll partner you with a mentor as a painter. You want to be a writer? We'll partner you with a successful transgender writer that's working in Amazon and Amazon show called Transparent. And let's film that. Let's film that process. So that sense of mentorship aspect of it, and just sense of giving them hope is as simple as that.
Yeah.
Of, like trans youth, that their dreams are valid, they are valid.
It's like the intersectionality of mentorship, because like we as people of color, like we've struggled and we strive and we go to mentors, but then the other layer of being trans, like that's another thing to like, you don't find those mentors.
Yeah.
And so you are giving them that opportunity.
And it's something that if you don't see it,
Yeah.
how could you be it? You know?
Yeah.
Even better if you could actually have the conversation that, oh, you've
Yeah.
done it before.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could do it as well.
Yeah.
You know? So we did that project, and proudly we won a GLAAD Media Award for that.
Nice. Yeah.
Which is like a thing to be I appreciate that so much, because to be appreciated by your peers,
Yes.
you know, and the community. GLAAD Media Award is an incredible organization that works in media advocacy and LGBTQ storytelling. And we did that, and we did a project called No League of Their Own, which is basically about a sports documentary in partnership with Univision, which is basically at the time in 2015, the International Olympic Committee allowed trans women to join in women's competition.
that's right, yeah.
So we featured transgender athlete from elementary, high school, college, even Caitlyn Jenner. You know, and interviewed their journey, and sort of
Yeah.
created that nuance of like, what does it mean? And it was broadcasted in Univision.
So it's very global in scope, right?
Yeah, and I like to think that like a lot of I bring a lot of my personal journey into the projects that I produce, and I would like to stick that way, because like, who else is gonna do it for
Yeah.
you? You know, like,
Totally.
who else is gonna do it? You gotta hustle to get it done.
That's
you know?
why we have this show, because who else is going to tell
Who else is gonna
Filipino
do it
American
for
stories?
us, right?
Yeah.
And like, who would understand our nuance?
Exactly.
Ding. Every time that word we should ding, nuance.
That's a new thing.
I do love that word. I really do.
Yeah.
Don't you
Yeah.
love that
Yeah,
word?
of course.
Yeah.
Because it's not black and white. It's not. There's so much gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being Filipino is not a monolith.
Yeah.
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 Right?
Gender is nuance.
Gender is nuanced.
In the spectrum.
So, what kind of work do you do in the Philippines through GenderProud or the Filipino community here?
Yeah, so GenderProud was working a lot, you know, with the community. We actually went to the Philippines. We were there for a month in 2015. We partnered with an organization called Human Rights Campaign, and we got some funding from Arcus Foundation to do a 3-city tour where we did like a 2-day tour where in each city. So first stop was Cebu, where in one day we did a capacity building sort of workshop. Meaning like working with different organizations in Cebu, like Transgender Colors, to really like working with the local trans communities and like what they're working on and like how could we help. So we did that for one day. And then the second day, we would do this thing called sort of media storytelling. Like how do you actually deal with media in the Philippines and when it comes to transgender narrative?
Interesting.
Hey, media in the
bit of work.
Philippines, so much work to do. I mean, like, I remember going in interviews, and sometimes before the interview, I would send them an email. Please don't ask me this question. Like, literally,
You had to.
You have to because like,
they'd be invasive like that?
invasive and always focusing on the surgery aspect
Yeah.
and focusing on those. Because when you do that, you don't get to really tell the nuanced stories and experiences of trans people. And you know, you have to educate them, and again, there's all these layers of like you're talking to media, and then you have to even educate them, and they're supposed to be the media educating. So it's like all these friction and pressure of you just want to tell your story, and obviously, if you're being interviewed in a media interview that's just for 5 minutes, like and you're educating always about explaining Trans 101 is like. It's very Trans 101-ish. You know? So I think there's a better way to tell those stories and to focus on like giving that platform to the people telling that story. And we did Cebu, we did Quezon City, and we went all the way to Vegan.
Oh, wow.
Ilocos Norte. Yeah.
Vegan.
We went all the way.
No meat.
No meat, vegan.
Hindi.
No, different kind, Joe. Different kind of
Not that one. I love
Ilocos Sur.
Yes. Have you been? Have you guys been?
I'm going with Girly, with my wife.
In
May.
Vegan?
May. Yeah.
Yes, it's really beautiful there.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
and they have a
With the
very-
cobblestone, like the historical
and
city.
they're talking about vegan, like no meat, like they're famous for this this food called bagnet.
Yeah.
Which is so...
Have you been to Bagnet here?
No, is it really?
So there are two places.
Okay.
There's one in Glendale and there's one in historic Filipino town. It's called Bagnet. I didn't know what Bagnet was until I went to this place. And I ordered it and then I looked at it and I said, this is breakfast lechon. What am I doing with my life?
Yes.
I should not know that this exists. This is terrible.
It is so good.
Delicious. I never knew. What's the difference between bagnet and like lechon kuale?
I don't get it either.
I think bagnet is extra crispy. It's just super extra crispy. I mean, at least that's what
That's what they're going to tell you.
We always end up talking about food.
I mean, let's get into it. And telling me, I'm like, I like to cook, darling. I've done my own
What is
version
your
of kamayan, girl.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
I think
I
you
want to
need
see
to
it.
invite us.
I know. I want to get invited too.
I got Instagram pictures.
Oh man, I want to taste it.
That's funny because Ryan's a food appreciator.
appreciate food.
I'm the one that's never been to the Philippines.
Yeah.
So
Not yet.
Not yet.
Everything is yet in life.
This is true. One day, my dream is that the Department of Tourism of the Philippines will pay for a trip to send the entire crew to go to the
Listen up,
Philippines.
Department of
Hello,
Tourism.
hello. Remember, in some emails that I've sent, we could get it done.
Oh,
Okay,
there
we
you
could
go.
collaborate on
There
that,
we go.
It's
And
more
then
fun there. It's more fun.
That's what I've heard. It's more fun.
It's more fun in the Philippines.
Philippines.
Yes.
I want to see a beauty pageant in real life.
Girl, it's so much fun.
I would be like, yes, 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 yes.
I love still going every time I go. So I go quite a bit. I
Yeah.
go almost every. I mean, when I was doing a lot of GenderProud work there, I was there like 5-6 times a year. But now I go back every January.
Oh, just like your parents.
Too cold in New York, darling.
Yeah.
I'm such an island girl. Not me, So I go and
This is why we live in California.
yes. I mean, especially right now. I mean,
It's October and it's 80 degrees. I'm sorry, guys. So that's when, as we record this, it's October and it's 80 degrees. I feel bad for you in the East Coast because it's cold.
it's so cold. And then still my favorite thing when I go back there is like to watch trans pageant. Not like, and I actually like the ones where you're on the side of the street.
Yeah.
There's
The gritty ones.
There's usually a canal next to it, and then there's like a gotohan eating food, and it's usually a fiesta celebration, and the trans women are just like dressing up on the street. You know, like that like such a throwback for me. That like that was our life.
How you started.
Yeah.
That's home.
your home,
That's family. Like I mean, like I still love watching trans pageant. And there's one here in LA.
There
there's
is?
one
Yeah.
every year.
I think I've saw it.
Mama Karina, which is like my
Ooh.
transgender mother here. She does this pageant called Queen of the Universe. I'm
I
not sure
love
if
the
there's
name.
one. Yeah, that was one of the first pageant I won here in Los Angeles.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to look up when that is, and I'm going to go.
It's
I
so
wanna
much
go.
fun.
I want to go.
But this one's not just Filipinos. Like it's open to everybody.
Oh, no, that's fine. I want to go.
yeah.
I still, like, there have been times where, we've had the opportunity to go to DragCon, and then it was just scheduling that I couldn't go. And it was just like, this is the worst day of my life. That I'm supposed to be there, but I am here.
Yeah.
And then, we're going to go, Ryan,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Mike.
Go.
We're going to go.
Go.
We'll have
go,
fun.
Go.
So I wanted to ask, about beauty contests and everything. How do you define beauty?
What? That's such a.
It's such a.
We wanted
Miss
to
Universe
throw
question.
you a Miss Universe
Miss
question. That's a
Universe
very
question.
Miss Universe.
How do you define it?
It's defined by your spirit. Be a spirit goddess and make your own definition of beauty. Own it. It's as simple as that. It really is. It's it's. It's the purpose, that you bring into the world, how you speak on it and work on it and work on it, and bring that out to the world. It's as simple as that for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
world peace.
high cheekbones.
World peace is good, but
peace.
certainly
World peace.
a good highlighter in the morning, like a little.
It's not light skin, Joe. Or we were going to do a different episode on colorism later.
You're beautiful, Joe.
Thank you.
That's a whole episode right there.
I know. We're going to eventually get to it. The colorism episode.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's such a huge thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still, it's.
Yeah.
How do we even unpack that? Like, how
I
do
don't
we even,
know.
like?
I mean, we have these conversations.
we can unpack it.
We have these
certainly.
conversations together, and most of the time, the conversation is, Elaine, why are you so dark? And
Who never said that?
Who said that?
Her husband.
The follow-up would be because
Pointing
I
at
want to
me.
be as dark as you.
Oh, I know. I mean, I embrace it now.
I do try to get dark as possible, but I'm okay.
I grew up, in the pageant world. I mean, they used to bleach my skin. We used to bleach my skin.
Did you use lina? That's what my mom used to put on me as a child.
Girl, it's like
I used to use Escanol.
etas.
What is that?
It's a powder.
Oh.
And you
yeah.
put like agua oxigenada,
Yeah,
like that
Yeah.
thing. It's like it burns, and sometimes they put then they put it, and it cracks, and then you stay there for like. I mean, this is when we didn't have any budget at all.
Yeah.
But like because it's such an ideal thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you want to be light on stage and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and it hurts, and
Oh my
you're
God.
doing it for like an hour. Or sometimes if we have a friend from Japan would bring this bleaching sort of
Skin whitening.
oil, skin
Oh my
whitening,
God.
like. I know it's a culture that they believe, but there's this layer of like the critical analysis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
the
totally.
damage that it does to
Oh,
us,
totally.
the psyche of a person.
I was given skin whitening cream as like as a 7-year-old.
Yeah, me too.
Shut up, Ryan.
I'm not
Really?
kidding. I used to use Escanol on my face.
In the Philippines?
Yeah.
Here.
Here?
Yeah.
Oh my
Or what is
God.
that pink? The chinsansu, right? The pink thing.
Because my mom used something called lina, and it looked like a chapstick, and then she would like put it on her face, like dot it on her face
Like
before.
foundation?
It was like before foundation. Then she would rub it in, and then she would put her foundation on top. And the purpose of the lina was that it would bleach her skin. And so I was like, my mom was like, "Here, you're too dark. You do this." I'm like, I'm a little kid. Stop.
Here's the tea. I mean, I remember doing an interview in the Philippines, a magazine that shall name
Nameless.
nameless. I was doing an interview. It's about beauty, and there were some questions, and I remember answering a question about beauty, and I went in and decolonizing the mind. I went in
nice.
and colorism. They did not print that.
Oh, because they're probably sponsored by like Dr. Vicky Bello or something.
It's just
Our friend's mom.
so much to unpack there. I mean, it's it's how do you even.
Yeah, no, I know somebody I grew up with went to the Philippines and is now like a singer over there. And he is like probably the same color skin as me, but he goes to Dr. Vicky Bello and gets treatments all the time. And I'm like, your skin doesn't look real anymore. Like, I'm just like, oh, yeah. But I like how we went from your inspirational beauty is in what you think to a whole like 10-minute discussion on
Because
colorism.
it's the nuance.
Nuance.
Filipinos. Ding.
So in the news lately, there's a leaked memo where the Trump administration wants to, I guess, redefine sex.
And gender.
And
Sex
gender.
specifically, yes.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
correlates to their understanding of gender. Yeah, it's...
I mean, we all know Trump is the devil.
Cheetolini.
Yes, but what's kind of your initial reaction to that?
I'm outraged. I am just, I did some interviews about this too, because like the initial reaction is definitely just outrage, like again, and why it's just despicable, you know. But also that's the initial reaction part, but also inspired about like the people showing up on protests, all over United States, of people standing up that they're not gonna let this thing, dim our goddess spirit, that, and I think most importantly for me, it's like what I think of trans youth, when they're hearing this thing, when they're hearing that their identities are being invalidated, literally erased, and the documents and the culture and administration that's supposed to adhere to supporting, its citizens. I just think about that, but also the artist in me is like, how do I continue using art to shed light on this, to shed beauty and power and resilience? I mean, just today I posted about this magazine cover that I did. It's a magazine called Surat Magazine. It started as a Kickstarter campaign by Christian Cabuay. Right?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
He wants to do the magazine all in Baybayin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the magazine, and he, it was a collaboration with him and photographer Nicolo Cosme. So we did a cover to pay homage to Lakapati, which is a pre-colonized Philippine transgender goddess of golden rice, and fertility.
Ooh.
So
I pre-posted that immediately after you. So I was just like, I'm posting this now.
it's just I want to utilize art to
Yeah.
to give more beauty to the world,
Yeah.
and and just be there as much as I can to especially trans youth that really are
Yeah.
experiencing this thing. And obviously it's a call to action to allies.
Yes.
That this is the attempt and erasure in our identity. It means you're next. Like when are you? Where are you when this thing happened?
Like Trans Lifeline on Instagram, they posted when that came out that they were having an influx. They got 2 times the normal first time callers, and the hotline was getting 4 times the normal total of callers when that story came out. And it was just really like that story. I was inspired then to like, I don't have a lot of money, but I'm going to donate when I can. So my boss was like, just donate $5.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And I did it. I was like $5 to that because it's what I can do in this time, because there are a community, there are sisters and brothers. Like we started this conversation talking about how Filipinos have the walking contradiction of this community. And, we have these people in our families, in our lives.
Yeah.
And so there can't be a race. They're
It's
going to be
part of
here.
our history.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's literally part of our
a
history.
pre-colonial goddess.
and
Lakapati.
even just that,
I like
Lakapati.
that. I like that.
Yeah.
And the emails I'm receiving is horrifying. Like the fear that people are feeling right now, which is just outrageous, and gotta keep on fighting. I also think about when we were growing up in the Philippines. It doesn't mean like I'm validating that like, oh, it's gonna be okay. I'm not making light of these things. Like, but growing up in the Philippines, we had nothing. We had no protection. There's no any sort of recognition about our identity. But we made it through. We made it through the power of sisterhood, mentorship, and the chosen family aspect. That like knowing that like maybe your blood family is not accepting, but you find that safe space.
Yeah.
Find that your chosen family to support you. And sometimes it just takes that one person to believe in you. And that's all you need. One person believed in me. My transgender mother saw something in me, and that's all I needed.
We believe in all our people,
Yeah.
right?
So what's the best way for cisgender people to kind of be allies?
It's just to simply accept that when trans people say that who we are, don't question it, because we say who we are, and it's I think there's a lot of process even of questioning even like our identity. Like we had to explain, and validate our identity. Like when trans women say that we're women, we're women. Trans men, they're men, and it's a lot of work to unpack a long culture, and that's been telling you that there's only one way to be a man, there's only one way to be a woman, and there's so much. I mean, like I could talk about, when a mother, right, when a mother is pregnant, right, and you look at the ultrasound and they see it's when the doctor says, oh, it's a boy. There's all this implanted gender association.
Yeah.
That's
Like
starts
those
from the
gender
very
reveal
beginning.
parties
Then
and all
gender
those
reveal
things,
parties,
which
so
I
they're
don't
just like-
understand. That is such an odd recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
and it's capitalism.
Oh, totally. That's very true.
It's capitalism.
On the next episode,
So
Colorism, capitalism,
so people with blue and red balloons can sell their balloons.
pink.
Sorry. Pink and blue.
And I think I think what I'm trying to say is just like there's a lot to unpack, and I think question your own biases around that. And it doesn't just apply to trans people, it applies to gender that for so long we've been sold this idea that gender is that this rigid male
This
and this
machismo.
emotional bitchy woman,
Yeah.
and the male is going to be this certain, work, and a woman could just stay. Like that's just so limiting, and it's such a
Not nuanced. Ding.
not nuanced. So it's a lot to unpack, and be there and support local trans organizations. Here in LA, there's a Trans Latina organization. There's Transgender Law Center here in California, and find and St. Jude Hospital here in St. John's. St. John's Health community center that supports trans, medical care. There's always finding that community that supports. And it's always start with the local community.
Cool.
I think we should wrap up, but this has been an excellent conversation, and we've gone through. So we could probably talk for hours, and probably would be chismes more without the microphone.
Oh wait, I have a gift for you guys.
Oh, you have a gift?
My bag is there actually. I have a gift. Look at this.
What?
A copy of American Like Me.
Oh my god! Oh my gosh! Mike, you should take a picture of her holding this
Copy of
the
American
book.
Like Me.
Look at this.
They're taking photos right now.
Yes, I love it. Yes,
Just
find the
like
light,
any
honey.
Filipino party.
Find the light, honey.
How did you get involved with this project?
So America and her husband Ryan has an organization called Harness, which it's a nonprofit organization which basically gathers activists, artists, people on the ground that's working to about intersectional issues, about immigration, human rights, feminism, LGBT rights. So I think once or twice every year, like they do a retreat. So I was in one of their retreat here in Los Angeles, and spent a weekend with them and hung out. And next thing I know, America said, "I'm writing a book," and I'm gathering all these contributors.
That's
and
amazing.
She said I should contribute. I was like, sure, why not? So here I am. No, I'm so proud of America and obviously all the
She's
people.
awesome.
Certainly,
really
you
great.
see all the intersectional stories are being held. I mean,
Yeah.
Carmen Carrera, Tanaya, to Lin-Manuel Miranda,
Roxanne Gay.
to Roxanne Gay, and it went New York Times bestseller. Yes, last
Yay!
week. So
Are you the only Filipino?
let me see.
Anna Akana is half Filipino, I think.
Okay. I actually did not know that.
If you see America Ferrera, tell her I'm in love with her.
I will. Wow.
Kidding.
Tell
yourself, Joe.
He really loves Superstore.
It's the best show ever.
Yeah.
So good.
So
I think,
good,
yeah.
right?
Anna.
So here's my gift for y'all.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
write it. Yay.
Thank you. The gift. Oh.
So people could pick it up in Amazon or other places?
Yeah,
Wherever you-
Amazon, and I think you just go to Amazon is one of them. You go to the website,
Yeah.
Simon and Schuster, and
Yeah.
you'll see all the places.
You can also order it on Audible. I used my Audible credit
Nice.
to get the book. And so I haven't powered through it, but I did skip to your chapter because I was like, I want to hear.
Thank you.
It was really, when you were recounting some of the stories about Macy's, I was like, yes, she talked about that in her
So you narrated your own part?
So I wrote my own.
No, I mean,
what do you mean?
Did you
so
read
was it
on the
audio?
Audible? Was that you?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
So did you? Was it launched already? I didn't even
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's actually. It's so funny to. I love because I love podcasts. I love listening to that stuff. So it's fun to. Yeah, I narrated
Yeah.
my own thing.
That's cool.
Yes.
Nice.
It's not all of them. So like,
I'm curious to hear how
it was good. It was actually really good.
Because I remember coming out of that recording studio and
You're like paranoid, like, oh no.
the engineer was just like, it sounded like you're just beautifully whispering. It's like, okay, that's a compliment, right? I guess that's a compliment.
You
So-
had NPR voice then.
Okay,
So,
that's
like,
good.
hello.
Work NPR. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But
thank
yeah,
you for
thank
coming.
This is
Of
amazing.
course.
Where can people reach you?
Just Geena Rocero everywhere.
Buy the book American Like Me. Support Geena wherever she is doing work everywhere.
Yeah,
GenderProud.
lots of
GenderProud.
fun projects coming up that I can't talk about yet.
Support your
but-
local nonprofits.
Spoken. Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
thank you a million times over. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, salamat.
Thanks.
Let's eat some bagnet.
Yay! This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Colado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.